You're listening to Mentoring Developers. I want to talk about your entry into this industry, as a paid programmer. So a couple of things I wanted to know was, we mentioned that it was, that we have to learn new languages and keep up to date. That's something that is true. We understand. But the problem is that the goalposts keep shifting. And so how to keep your skills up to date? And the other problem is, how do you get your foot in the door?
Yeah. And I think that is, I would say for anybody, and this is something that anybody who's just starting out should keep in mind, that all of us struggle with this. Even people that are professionally paid programmers or even the best known programmers in the world still struggle with this. In my opinion, I think that's what should be top on people's list nowadays, is learning how to learn things really, really quickly.
Yeah, I think so. The problem is, here's the struggle is, imagine I am a new developer. I'm really interested. I understand what I need to do. I need to keep my skills up to date. I need to be out there and coding and talking to people, all that good stuff. But now I have a choice. I know that there are potentially 100 programming languages or paradigms, 100 different things that I should know, because it's like keeping up with news, right? That in itself will take half your day just to keep up with what's going on.
Yeah, I think that is a very good point, because you're essentially highlighting, like, I think one of the key things of anybody getting into any new field, but especially relevant for programming, is surface level knowledgeable about a million different things. So if I'm looking back and how I would do things differently, I think I would have focused more time with my first language on becoming really, really, really good at that first language. And so that you can learn a lot of the programming and software development principles without having to distract yourself with, language A, B, or C. Because fundamentally, the more time you spend in it, the more you realize, well, there's a lot of, all the concepts are basically the same. For somebody starting out, I think it's hard to imagine, but it becomes eventually, it becomes easy to pick up a new language, because you're still dealing with the same core concepts. So it's like, what are the data structures look like? Is it mutable, immutable? In other words, are you assigning variables, or is it functional in nature? Is it an object-oriented language? Once you mark those off, I feel like if you can become incredibly knowledgeable, I think, in one core language, it gives you a lot easier entrance into anything else that you would learn in the future, because you don't have to go about learning the big concepts.
I agree with that point. I think this is really valuable. But in terms of getting your first job, I think this is really to your benefit to focus on one thing, because nobody's going to pay you to know the names of all the different programming languages and just know just a surface level knowledge of everything, because that doesn't help anybody. So
correct. Unfortunately, they don't hire for Hacker News experts.
Unless you're working for Hacker News.
Yeah, true.
In that case, maybe. So that's pretty good. So you need to go a little bit deep, at least. A little bit deep, so you're actually productive. Because nobody really cares, even if you know JavaScript or Ruby or C# or Java, nobody really cares that you know these languages. What they care about is, can you do that thing that they need you to do? And you use that programming language, perhaps that's a constraint on their part. Perhaps.
And I think that's that is exactly it. And there's a couple of key words that you brought out there of actually being able to do something of value and being productive. And you highlight the idea that people need to, when they're starting, they need to be able to produce something of actual value. And so there's two key words there, value and productivity. So when you're first learning, I think that's the thing. When you say that, you can't, just knowing a bunch of different names of languages and surfing on TechCrunch or Hacker News, which was my case when I was just getting out of the military, doesn't really serve anything. You actually have to be able to build things. And to be productive, ultimately, you need to be good at one thing, which I will say, though, today, I think is relatively, it's a little bit easier, or maybe it's a little bit easier, than it was in the past, because if you think about it, you can learn JavaScript now as a first language, which maybe there's pros and cons to that, but you can learn it as a first language and both be able to eventually be knowledgeable in everything on the server side as well as everything on the front end, assuming that you want to go into web development. And then even if not, I mean, there's plenty of people now that are working on JavaScript in just about every imaginable environment that you can think of. And people are pouring a lot of money into it as well. So now you've got a bunch of financial firms that are backing the Node.js Foundation. So, it's not going to disappear. It's the top language, according to RedMonk's programming language rankings and, all the various sources out there. JavaScript is definitely here to stay. And given the fact that you can do nearly anything in it now, and that there's really, really good courses in it, I figure that the average beginner should really focus on either JavaScript, Python, or Ruby and become incredibly good in one of those.
Thank you so much for listening.
For show notes and transcripts, visit us at mentoringdevelopers.com.